Hello and welcome back to the final quarterly report then of 1854, and it has been an interesting summer in more ways than one. We'll start off with kind of a sort of military appraisal then. Nothing to report. It's a really annoying feature of this game. Whenever you click on a map, it automatically goes to the economic sort of map. Nothing to report in the European theatre. The situation has settled down in Greece. It looks like that kind of revolt was repressed, as is the case with the kind of follow-on revolt in Albania. Hussein Avni is back with his cavalry division at Sofia and is sitting tight, really. This is our rapid reaction force. He's a fast mover, so he can kind of reach anywhere very, very kind of easily. Because of the kind of the concern about insurgencies developing in the Balkan Peninsula, we can see some areas are prone to kind of revolt. We've sent some Bashi bazooks who've broken off from the eastern Anatolia region and sent them just to sit in a couple of areas, just to really function as a deterrent to kind of suppress. We might be looking at developing some smaller forces a bit more, because we can see that in southern Serbia now and in Bosnia, this is not unique to us. The Austrians also have a problem with this. We can see some areas where there is a very small background kind of revolt risk. We know that there are people in those areas organising against us, and this could crystallise into something at some point, but if it did, it would be very readily and easily suppressed. The fortress upgrade at Adrianople is now complete. We can see a nice new kind of stone type graphic. So we have modern fortresses now in Constantinople and Adrianople, making for a really nice kind of strong centre in the event of any kind of major conflict. Nothing to report in eastern Anatolia. We've got a Bashi bazook scattered out, again just functioning really as a kind of really to kind of suppress any sort of insurgencies or revolts or anything like that. We've still got our main Eastern Army under Abdul Karim just sitting tight in the fortress at Erzurum, and we can see that these militia corps are gradually turning into kind of regular armies. They're no longer conscripts. They're gradually kind of, we can see the elements are gradually being trained and developed, and that's a really, really good sign. And probably within a year or two, these will basically be normal kind of army corps, if you like, as opposed to kind of conscripts, as opposed to militia. Now, the war in Aden has stabilised significantly. Ismail Pasha, when we last left off, was kind of besieged, his force heavily defeated at Hodeida, and he was sitting inside Sana'a. We gave it a month. He sallied from the fortress and absolutely devastated the Yemeni force that was besieging it. He pulled off a really nice victory with a force that was kind of quite broken as well. It was kind of badly bruised, and it was surrounded. It was not able to kind of get any replacements or anything like that, and he pulled off a sensational victory. Zarif Pasha lifted the siege at sort of Aden. The investments at Aden, we can see, have really paid off. Getting this really large, sort of, I say it's pre-industrial, but it's a big European-style fortress as opposed to a small colonial fort in Aden, whilst expensive, has really paid dividends. This is going to be a really hard area for them to take, and it's already going to be difficult for them to take Sana'a anyway. Zarif Pasha made a landing. He initially avoided combat until he was in a position that he could kind of engage the enemy. He did. They've fallen back. It is a kind of ongoing conflict. These forces in the greater scheme of things are very small compared to what we saw in the Crimean War, fighting the Russians. But we're also limited in terms of what we can supply here because it's quite remote. But it feels a little bit, actually, in the last sort of few months, or the last couple of months, as though we started to actually see some kind of headway. I say that reluctantly, and I feel like a kind of one of those kind of generals during the Vietnam War on a news camera. The body count's looking good and that sort of thing. But no, it does feel like we're making some headway. The defeat outside Sana'a was significant enough that, it's the first time in a long time that we've seen a large part of the Yemeni insurgency essentially crumble. And they still have fairly substantial forces, and of course there could be another kind of rebellion where more forces join them, but it feels like what we have in theatre is good enough now. We have a commander, Zarif Pasha, who's the overall theatre commander, and then working with him is a Lieutenant General, Ismail Pasha. So we've got a nice command structure in place. Small forces, but I think good enough to do the job. So neither of these boys are activated this sort of turn, so we're just going to get, now the kind of siege has been lifted at Aden, we're going to get Zarif Pasha into Taiz. And the good thing with having him anchored in Taiz is even if Ismail moves into Sana'a or Hadramut, Zaev Pasha, as a 3-star general, can commit his forces on the basis of a march to the sound of the guns. So we're going to try that. We're going to use these central highlands as a place to anchor our main force and conduct sorties down from the kind of hills and the mountains, if you like. Obviously, the first move is going to be to lift a new siege, which has just begun, on Sana. That structure's intact. It is only a colonial fort at Sana. That's something to bear in mind. But things looking good there. Now, the other weird military development, which is slightly bewildering, you'll notice our national morale is down and we are suffering from war weariness. Austria hasn't declared war. Russia hasn't declared war. But Britain, now basically we attempted to secure a defensive alliance with Britain. They didn't fancy it. A proper full defensive alliance would have committed them to basically our defence in the event that we were attacked, and Britain doesn't fancy kind of sticking their neck out, especially after having just fought a war, which probably by now is, by the end was maybe fairly unpopular, I don't know. But because we wanted to kind of nevertheless impress them, keep them, sort of show them that we're a committed friend and an ally, and to try and nurture us over a long period of time good relations, we committed, well, you can see what's happened here. We committed to promising local support, which means that in the event that anyone declares war on Britain, we are committed to support them. Now, I thought it's fairly long odds anyone would, but it looks like that Venezuela has got itself into a kind of daft squabble with the British, perhaps over this British enclave at Georgetown, and bewilderingly, they've made the irrational decision to try and maybe press this through military means and conduct operations against the British. I mean, they're on a hiding to nothing, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility. It would be an absolutely daft decision, but political leaders do sometimes make crazy decisions. Maybe they think that the British, would be willing to sacrifice this. I don't know, but I mean, Venezuela going to war with the kind of global hegemon of this period is absolutely crazy. We have no real intentions of getting involved in this war. We have, however, we've thought, well, look, the opportunity presents itself. We're going to send the raiding fleet just to sit off the coast of Venezuela, just to have a look. I should say that if we didn't declare war on Venezuela in support of Britain, we would lose a lot of prestige points, and it would piss the British off big time. So we kind of, we're between a rock and a hard place. We cornered ourselves a bit, and I thought we've kind of got to do this stupid thing of supporting Britain against the Latin American country. Venezuela has no fleet. They probably have a very small army, But I thought, well, opportunity knocks. Let's send our raiding fleet, not to do any raiding. I don't think the Venezuelans would even have much of a merchant fleet, but to sit off Caracas, just have a look, see if we can sort of collect some intelligence. And I'm just toying with the idea, we might be able to send a small expedition. Now, before you laugh and think, that is absolutely an asinine notion of the Ottoman Empire, where is your grasp of reality? Well, first of all, we don't want the Ottoman Empire to be the Ottoman Empire of the real 19th century, which is, completely enfeebled and in a state of kind of profound decay that's kind of bullied by outside powers. Furthermore, there is actually historical precedence for the Ottoman Empire intervening in Latin America in the 19th century. 20 years from now, I think about 20 years, at the 1870s, or 1860s, actually, about 10, 15 years from now, is the real Mexican Civil War. Of course, Louis Napoleon Bonaparte tries to install Maximilian to the throne in Mexico. I think it's in 65 it starts, or just in the immediate aftermath of the American Civil War. So obviously this was an attempt to kind of bypass Monroe Doctrine and this sort of thing. And yeah, the French launched an expedition. They did it with the support of the Austrians, and believe it or not, you can check this out. It was something I was aware of anyway from kind of Osprey men-at-arms books. The Ottomans outfitted a small expeditionary force and sent it to Mexico to support this kind of imperialist government under Maximilian. I think it was very, very small. And but anyway, it happened. It's a thing that happened, and since if we don't declare war on Venezuela, we lose huge amounts of prestige points, and we're compelled to do it anyway. And it's going to create some disquiet. We're not going to see the kind of war weariness that we would in a war with Russia, where we're going to, lose battles and stuff like this. We might actually launch a very small expedition to Venezuela. We do have a heavy lift transport fleet that can move an army corps. We might move an army corps, maybe with a supply detachment. We could maybe land at Caracas. I'm just playing with the idea at the moment. I'm just toying with it. We don't have any kind of commitments elsewhere. Furthermore, Austria just sent us a proposed state visit. So Austria is obviously a little bit anxious about the fact that our relations have atrophied to such a point that they want to kind of do something to mitigate it. That doesn't say to me that this is a nation that is interested in declaring war on us in the short term. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it's smoke and mirrors. Maybe that they do intend to do that. But anyway, we might do this, and we wouldn't get much from it. But I mean, if we do nothing, a white peace will happen anyway. I don't know, because there's no prospect of any kind of engagement. So if we do nothing, a white peace would eventually, I think it's 3 to 6 months or something. But yeah, it will just happen naturally, and we won't lose any kind of prestige. But maybe we set an expedition out. We occupy Caracas. That is their capital city. That's the only victory location. We sit tight. It's not a fortress. They've got no hope in hell of holding out. We can't take any territory, but we could maybe press some kind of ludicrous claim, make them, force some kind of concession from them, get them to pay us reparations or something like this. It might just be an easy squeeze for money, And again, really ahistorical, a little bit weird, but not beyond the realms of possibility. Not outside, not outside actually something that the Ottomans kind of did do a little bit, which is to engage in some slightly bewildering and strange kind of engagement in Latin America, possibly because they wanted to bolster themselves as a big player and to intervene in something that was kind of important and significant at the time. Now, that is pretty much it. The only other military development is we have kind of got a new military technology. I think I can't remember her name, Mary Seacole. Not Florence Nightingale, the other one, basically. Let's have a look. Problem is, the more of these that we get, the less we're going to ever be able to seriously scroll through this and kind of Mary Seacole. Where is it? Yeah, probably bypassed it. Oh, okay, yeah, no, it is Mary Seacole. Okay, so anyway, we've got a kind of a technology which is a kind of an offshoot really from the Crimean War, but it allows us to build army field hospital detachments. No command cost. They've actually both been completed, so we're going to break those up. We're going to send one to Adrianople, and we're going to send clunky interface alert. Okay, yeah, one's at Adrianople. We're going to send the other one to the Eastern Army, I think, at Erzurum, and we'll get that to enter the structure when there. So that's another really nice kind of service asset unit. We've only built 2. We'll probably build a third one at some point soon. But I didn't want to go too crazy with state revenue. Our state revenue at the moment is just about kind of like we're basically making ends meet. I did just put an outlay on something, hence why we have a very small amount of... What was it? I'm trying to think what it was. It'll come to me. I just spent some state revenue on something. It wasn't any fortresses or anything like that. No, it'll come to me at some point. Anyway, that's it. In terms of military affairs, that's it. Now, the really exciting news, we don't have railroads yet, but the really exciting news, for me anyway, is with economic development. Again, we don't have railroads yet, that crucial technology, which is going to really serve to kind of boost. It's like the quickening for our economy. It's going to absolutely kind of boost our economy massively, not least because we've focused our industrial development. The productive forces are centered principally around Constantinople and Smyrna, which means that we only really need, before we begin to link up towns and cities, we want to basically build railroads within these regions. That connects up the factories, that increases the productivity in that region, in both of these regions dramatically. And once that's saying two sections of railroad, localized railroad basically. And so very, very quickly and easily we can kind of, if you like, almost double the manufacturing capacity of our economy, or slightly less than doubling it, but it's almost doubling it. I think we said about 60% efficiency at the moment. It would bring it up to about 100%. So that's something that we're waiting on. But the really exciting development now, unfortunately, you can't see it this term because it is something that has just kind of begun to dwindle. But I was concerned in the last kind of quarterly report in sort of midsummer, that the global economy was looking a little bit shaky. We were manufacturing a lot and we were beginning to stockpile a lot of commodities, but we weren't shifting it either at home or abroad. And the real concern was abroad, because the domestic market is what it is. It's kind of limits really, and we everything that we're manufacturing, we've got set to kind of maximum availability. So we're going to we've got to be constantly selling around 60 to 65 units of goods in the national market, and we're always going to be making around 190 to 230, I think, in terms of private capital yield. But in early September, for the first time, before September, I began to see a fairly dramatic increase in exports. very, very suddenly began to sharply increase. And in early September, our exports for the first time surpassed, in terms of both the quantity of units sold and the capital yield revenue, the revenue yield, surpassed what we actually do on the domestic market. So our capitalists now have been making more money based on exports than on domestic market sales, and that's a really exciting development, and quite a bit more. I mean, I think at one point we're shifting like 72 units of merchandises for exports, and we were making like 230, 240. It has cooled down a little bit. It was kind of from early September up till about late October was a kind of 2-month period where we were looking at really, really nice kind of exports, and that's a really, really good sign. We were shifting a lot of cereals, some manufactured goods, textiles seems to be something that's really, really popular for exports, and this is a really important step when we consider that in 1850, when we took over the administration of this kind of ailing empire, if you like, it was an absolute breadbasket economy, complete backwater, rooted almost entirely in guild-based production. I would now posit that half of the national economy, at least, is based on modern manufactories and modern agricultural enterprises. More than that, probably half to 2/3, And furthermore, even though we don't have railroads yet, we're exporting manufactured goods. We're shifting manufactured goods, textiles. So we are emerging as an industrial economy. And that's a really exciting development. It's really, really good, and that's without railroads. So we're heading in the right direction. Really, really, definitely are. We're not the Ottoman Empire, I think, of the real 1854. It's a really dramatic 4-year period of profound economic growth and restructuring of the economy. But that is what happened in the Industrial Revolution. I mean, the Ottoman Empire did go through the Industrial Revolution, not to the intensive extent that it is now. But our own Industrial Revolution mirrors much more the kind of experience of like Northern Italy, Germany, France, and Britain. Perhaps less so Spain. But we're looking at a really, really serious period of economic growth and industrial development, which is really, really good. We've begun the development of another canned goods shop in Bursa, and of course we have one currently being developed in Sinop. We completed an additional tobacco plantation in northern Bulgaria. There is room to develop another one there, and I think that's something that's going to be on the cards, probably the next development that we'll be looking at. And that will be the last agricultural enterprise, or the last tobacco plantation in any case, that we can build. Because of the amount of private capital revenue, I've been thinking, God, what the hell do we do with it? So the other thing is we've begun an additional merchant fleet, which is in construction, and also we grow some fruits, but one thing that we don't produce anything of is wine. And we're going to be focusing wine development on the Greek islands of Crete, Rhodes, or the Dodecanese, or how it's pronounced, Cyprus, and also Latakia, Lebanon, I suppose, Lebanon, Syria. So we're going to, and wine will soak up some of the manufactured goods that we have, because we have more manufactured goods that we can sell on the domestic market and export. So we need to look at kind of other commodities that actually use manufactured goods for their own production. One is vineyards, because obviously we need glass bottles to make wine. And the other thing is going to be luxury goods. So we'll be looking at luxury goods shop. I think probably next year we're going to look to build 1 or 2 luxury goods shops, and we're going to be building another couple of vineyards in these Greek islands. These Greek islands are quite vulnerable because they're prone to revolt. There is a kind of background revolt risk. Thankfully not in Crete, but we're going to, I think, probably build harbours and depots and firm up our position a little bit in these Greek islands. We don't want we don't want to be investing money in kind of vineyards and then have these regions periodically lost to kind of Greek insurgents. So we're going to look at a little bit of development and for our economic development, if you like, to kind of follow on from security development, security and infrastructure developments, harbours, some depots, and we'll look to be getting some kind of garrison force in Cyprus and in Rhodes. That's pretty much it in terms of developments. Really, really exciting latter part of the year, actually. At first, I was thinking, this is not the recovery from the war that I was hoping for. I was looking at domestic market sales. I was thinking, exports are kind of about the same, and our territories were recovering from war damage, and I was thinking, I was really hoping for an economic boom after the war, not least because of all that kind of industrial development, a bit like the United States in the Second World War. Really, we had a similar kind of experience. Obviously, the war was a bit more desperate for us than it was for the United States in the Second World War, but we enjoyed significant industrial development during that war with Russia. We had we were cocooned by Allied forces, and we continuously defeated the Russian army in the field, despite the kind of havoc wrought in the Balkan Peninsula, especially Bulgaria, which got the worst of it, and northern Greece as well. Our industrial development in the centre was not really significantly affected. But anyway, that's now really, really paying dividends, and we're looking at really, really strong exports, fairly sustained exports as well. It's dipped a little bit, that will happen, but it was such a significant growth in exports that it leads me to think that this is going to be the kind of music of the future, and we're going to be looking at establishing ourselves as an export economy. The next thing is really railroads. It's every single turn I look for this kind of icon here to be kind of illuminated, to click on it, and to hope for it to be anything other than just basically a readback of kind of merchant fleets lifting supplies or some other kind of technological development. So it's nothing that we can invest in because it's something that already exists in a theoretical capacity everywhere else. Everyone around us already has it. So it's just a case that it will appear at 100%. We are, despite the fact that state revenue is hard pressed, we are going to keep up this, because this is it's a bit of a sunk cost thing, but we've made a really good headway on percussion cap muskets, and once it's done, I think it could be done in the next year or so, that will free up 50 state revenue per turn. And then what we're going to be looking to do is to consistently invest in improving education. We're going to start looking to plough money into education every year. I think 500 state revenue every year without failure, and see if we can not do something about literacy, which is sitting at 28%. It's not great, so we're going to try and sort of reverse that. I am the understanding that improving education system does affect literacy. So that's pretty much it. The next quarterly report then will be in, I'd say January. It will make it 1st of January, so really kind of not 6 weeks away from where we are now, and we'll have some feedback on our plans for Venezuela, and hopefully also some other good indications of what's happening on the world market. So thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.